Hey, I'm Stephanie, and today's video is a get ready with me with my October makeup capsule. I put this kit together filled with pieces of makeup that are inspired by current new releases that have been tempting me, but that I don't want to get because I already have something so similar. And every single piece of makeup in this bag was at some point something new, something exciting, something that I didn't have and that was very covetable, just like that new makeup out on the market is now. So I want to try to reawaken that feeling for this makeup that I already have. The look I'm going to do today is one that's actually been requested by a couple of people now. It's just a look that I've had in a couple of my most recent videos that I created with this bag. It's very simple, it's very basic, and the colors that I'm going to be using are fairly common. So even if you don't have exactly what I have, but you want to follow along with me, I'm sure you can find an equivalent in your collection too. And if you're interested in how I chose these items and exactly what's in this bag, I'll link the video where I put it all together here and in the show notes so you can check it out. As always, I'm starting off with a clean palette that I disinfect with 70% alcohol and a clean spatula that I disinfect the same way. I like to use this method of applying my makeup just because it makes everything feel a little bit cleaner, and it also gives me a great opportunity to prime my brushes because I can really work the product into the brush fibers, and then I feel like I get a more even application on my face. When it comes to the primers I had in this makeup capsule, I just had a bunch of samples in there because I used up my favorite Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base several months ago, and I went into town, I got a whole bunch of different samples, and I'm still working my way through them to see if one of them might be even better than the Bobbi Brown. So far, nothing has convinced me that it is absolutely positively better than the Bobbi Brown, but I haven't tried this one yet. It is the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Hydrating Primer, and so we'll see if this one impresses me today. So I think I'm only going to put it on half my face. As you can probably tell, my rosacea is in full bloom right now, and although I'm not entirely sure what's causing it, I do have my suspicions. I think it's just yet another symptom of perimenopause because my whole body's inflamed right now. That's why I'm wearing my sexy shoulder contraption here, so that I have some heat on my shoulder to try to make it feel a little better. And I think it's the same thing. I think I'm just dealing with inflammation in my skin as well. But I have a feeling that maybe trying all these different primers isn't helping, so maybe I need to take a break. But since I have the Giorgio Armani primer on right now, it does make my skin look a little glowier, and it does make it a tiny bit tacky. So we'll see what effect that has on the makeup that's going to go on top of it. And because my rosacea is so out of control, it's the perfect opportunity to go into my Salt Sneaky Balm green color corrector and put some of that on my face. And by the way, if I do happen to mention anything that I'm using today, everything will be linked in the description just in case you're curious. But pretty much everything I'm using today is fairly easily dupable about 30 times over because I feel like every brand seems to have some sort of version of what I'm using today. So if you're doing this look along with me, then feel free to use whatever you already have laying around because I'm sure it's just as beautiful and it's probably more suited to your skin than what I have because you already have it, and there's probably a reason for that. I do have to say I like the Salt Sneaky Balm a lot though. It's the kind of color corrector that I can put on its own, and I don't necessarily have to wear foundation over it because it doesn't necessarily look all sorts of green. I'm not being super careful about it today though because I am putting a relatively full coverage foundation on over it. I'm going to be just using a very thin layer of it, so it's not going to be as full coverage as it could be, but I don't have to worry if there's a little bit of green residue on my face afterwards. However, if I'm careful, I can actually get this to just look like skin and not like green. And while we're on the step of color correcting, I might as well add some of my Charlotte Tilbury Magic Vanish color corrector in shade 2 medium because I have some dark circles under my eyes. I've now also run out of my Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Eye Base, and I have to say I am kind of missing it, but I'm not sure if I miss the eye base itself or if I just miss the step of having an under eye primer because I don't know, my skin is a really weird kind of combination skin nowadays. I feel like I have dry patches and I have oily patches, and under my eyes is where I get dry. So I think I can often benefit from having at least a moisturizer up there. I probably should have added one today, but I didn't, and that's fine. I don't always do every step. It's not always an ideal makeup day, and that's okay because for me, makeup is just about relaxing. That's all it is. If I have to leave the house and I don't have time to do makeup in a relaxed way, I just won't wear it. because it doesn't really matter that much to me. It's more of an act of meditation. But I don't know if you can see the crepiness here. Like, my under eyes don't tend to stick to each other as much when I have a little bit of moisturizer under there. So I think what I should have done is I have that Aquaphor stick. I think I just have to start using that. So I will put that in next month's makeup capsule. So of course, if you want to see what next month's makeup capsule will contain, make sure you subscribe. Because I tend to shop my stash every month. It's fun just to get use out of what I have, to appreciate the things that I used to want so much, and now that I have, and just be grateful for them. My liquid luminizer this month is the Hollywood Flawless Filter from Charlotte Tilbury in shade 3. And I just put this on my cheekbones. I know some people use this as an all-over-the-face primer, and some people even suggested that I do that when I ran out of my current primer, but this is way too heavy for me if I put it all over my face. On my cheekbones, underneath makeup, it's gorgeous. Like here, priming this area is fine, but if I were to do it all over my face, it's just way too much. I did try it though, because might as well try using the things we have before we go and buy new things or repurchase old ones. When it comes to concealer, I had my Lancome Teint Idole Ultra Wear All Over Concealer in my bag. This is my one and only liquid concealer that I own, and I have nothing bad to say about it. It has honestly impressed me very much, but it is almost gone. I ended up using some of my cream concealer this month because I want to stretch this. I want to try a new concealer, and I want to use Black Friday to do that because I am going to need to replace this. And so I wanted to make sure I could stretch this out so that I can test them both simultaneously, because I want to see if the new concealer measures up to this old favorite. And it's really weird because sometimes there are products that I have that I just really like so much I would never even dream of cheating on them with another one. And then there are products like this where I don't understand why I don't want to just repurchase it, because it works perfectly. Like, I have no complaints. And yet I'm like, meh, I want to try something new. I don't know what that is. I honestly don't. Maybe if you have an idea of why I'm thinking that way, please let me know in the comments, because it honestly makes no sense to me. But that's fine. As long as I don't indulge in the urge to get too many new things that I can't use them and enjoy them all, that's fine. And so I think now that this one's almost gone, it's the perfect time to try something new. I'm just curious as to why I don't want to just stick with my tried and true. And if the new thing isn't as good as this, that's going to be a disappointment for sure. I do try to make my shopping decisions based on logic these days and not just raw emotion. So if I could figure it out, I would be grateful. When it comes to base products, I had two. One was this Wet n Wild Tinted Hydrator because I only had like 1 or 2 uses left, and I ended up using this up, so this is panned now. And I also had my Estée Lauder Double Wear Foundation in the shade 2N2 because this is my summer shade, and so there's only a very short window of the year when I can use this, and I wanted to make sure that I used that window. So I'm going to use this one today because it's the only one I have left, but I'll give you a brief review of the Tinted Hydrator. I thought this had a beautiful finish. It worked really well, but it was not a tinted hydrator for me. It was like a full coverage foundation. Now, I know that you can thin this out by mixing it with something that has less coverage or even thinning it out with a moisturizer, and I did try that, and it looked nice, but the staying power on this went from, I'd say, like a solid 5 hours to a solid 2.5 hours if I thinned it out at all. So if I wanted to get any amount of wear out of this at all, I had to just wear it straight, and then it was very full coverage. Because when I thinned it out, like with this is a very high coverage foundation, but I feel like I can put a very thin layer of it on my face and the performance of it doesn't suffer at all. Whereas this one, I felt like the performance went downhill pretty quickly unless I used quite a bit of it. Now, it didn't look cakey. Like, I'm not saying that when I used quite a bit, it all of a sudden gave me a very cakey, makeup-y look, but it just was very full coverage. So I do think that this is decent, but that full coverage only lasted about 5 hours on me, and then it would break up in funny ways. Like, it didn't wear gracefully. Like the Salt New York Sneaky Balm, that doesn't have a super long wear time. I'd say that's also maybe like a 6-hour wear time, but it fades gracefully. so that like by the end of the day, you don't have any like weird spots where there's still some foundation hanging on, or your dry patches are showing, or your pores are sticking out. It's nothing like that with the Salt Sneaky Balm. But with the Wet n Wild Tinted Hydrator, it did fade kind of weird. And that's actually the problem that I have with most drugstore foundations that I liked. They worked really well while they worked, but then they faded badly and they didn't last very long. And that's why I usually end up sticking with the higher end versions. So I won't be repurchasing this, but I do think it's a decent option if you are interested in a high coverage foundation that gives you a solid 5 hours of wear, as long as you don't mind that it looks a little bit wonky once it starts wearing off. The Double Wear, on the other hand, has been my tried and true for so many years now. And I know it's very full coverage, but I feel like that full coverage nature of it makes it very versatile, because this I can thin out. If I wanted to stretch it with a moisturizer or a luminizer, I could do that. I can use it straight. I can use it with the sponge and get a dewier finish. I can use it with a brush like I'm gonna do today to get a less dewy finish. And I feel like it just always does its job. It's just more dependable. Okay, looking at the primed side with the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Hydrating Primer, it does look dewier, but the difference isn't huge, and I don't feel like my pores are blurred. So I don't feel like this is doing a better job than the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base. I feel like it's about the same-ish. It does look nice though. When it comes to the contour in this makeup bag, I actually picked two because I do something called panning for gold. And that is when I take two very similar products and I pit them against each other side by side so I can do direct comparisons and see which one I like better. And when it comes to the color of these two, they are nearly identical. So it's all gonna come down to formula with these. And so I will be posting a video where I compare these two in depth. But I have to say right now, my impressions of using them side by side all month are that both of them are excellent, but they are different. And so I think they have advantages for different skin types. So if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed. I'm going to start by applying the Westman Atelier contour stick on this side of my face. One of the reasons I chose these two contour sticks for my makeup capsule is because I was really tempted by the new Haus Labs contour stick, but I figured I have these absolutely gorgeous sticks right here. Why not just use those? And I'm so glad that I did, because both of them really are a gorgeous color for me. They suit my needs, and I even have two really nice formulas here that do two totally different things for me. So I'm very glad that I'm not spending more money on something else to add to everything that I already have, especially because these are cream products. And I know I say this all the time, but I really think it's worth repeating that cream and liquid products tend to go off faster than powder products. So it's really important that we use them up, and I don't want to have too many new things at once. Just because if I do really like something, I want to get my use out of it. My bronzer of choice is my Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate Duo, which I am still working my way through. I have had pan on this baby for a couple of years now. It takes forever to go through this, and that makes me happy because this is an expensive product, so I'm glad to be getting my money's worth out of it. What I like about this particular bronzer is that it is a little bit dark on me, at least in the winter, but I find that I can always use it with a light hand and still manage to make it look really nice on my skin. I just feel like it looks like nothing on the skin. It just kind of gets pressed in there and looks like skin. Just really nice, dewy, gently bronzed skin. When it comes to cream blush, that's where it gets fun because I have my custom cream blush palette here. It is originally from Makeup Forever, but only these three shades are the originals in the palette, and everything else is just a smorgasbord of everything. Let's see, we have the Estée Lauder, we've got Makeup by Mario, Tom Ford, Patrick Ta, MAC, Kevyn Aucoin. So there's just a bunch of different things in here, but I love having the options in such a little tiny package. I just I feel like I get a lot more use out of these colors just because of the format that they're in, which just goes to show you format is everything. If you buy something and you really like it and you can't figure out why you're not using it, maybe it needs to be repotted, because that's what I did with some of these, and I find that I'm using them a whole lot more now. I used this blush here in the looks that everybody said that they liked, so that's what I'm going to use today, which feels a little bit strange because it's funny, like in my normal everyday to-day life, I've been very used to the brighter colors now, and this seems like it'd be more my thing because I'm always into muted colors, but I have to say, I've been enjoying the bright blushes lately. Having a tan certainly helps with that. It's funny because this is such a purpley blush. I wouldn't think that it would work on me, but somehow I think it kind of does. Then again, I am just using it as a base because I have my Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in a palette, and the blushes in there are beautiful. And I feel like they give this base a little bit more dimension. Now it's time to set this oily combination face with powder, but before I do, I want to take one last look at the primed versus not primed side. And I have to say, I do like the primed side better. Can you tell a difference on camera? I'd actually be curious to know that if it shows up. But I feel like this side is a little bit glowier and just a little bit more hydrated looking, and this side is just a little bit drier, but both sides look decent, so it still doesn't beat out the Bobbi Brown. Let's see how it handles powder. The one I chose for this makeup capsule was the Huda Beauty Easy Bake Powder. I have it in the shade Pound Cake. Okay, now we're going to work with some powders, and we're going to start with the eyes, so I'm going to prime them with this. It's a sample of the Anastasia eye primer, and this is the first time I've tried it, and the reason I chose to put this in my bag is because this sample had been decluttered to me, and my typical Urban Decay primer, this has been my ride or die primer forever. It has been the only one that has worked on my deep set hooded oily eyelids and actually kept shadows in place. And I feel like it's getting shaky. It doesn't always work as well as it used to. And I don't know if it's because I'm doing something differently, or if it's because of perimenopause and my oils are changing, or if it's just because this isn't working as well anymore. I have no idea, but I decided I would try something new. And I have to say, this has actually had great staying power for me. The one problem is, look how bright that is. I don't always want this amount of brightness on my eye. I have to admit, I can kind of blend it into the lid pretty easily, so it's not too dramatic. And I also have to admit that my eye shape really benefits when the lid is lighter like this, just because I do have such deep set eyes. It kind of brings it forward more. I don't know if you can tell the difference between my two eyes because you can't really see the lids very well when my eyes are open. But when my eyes are closed, this eye, I think with the primer, just looks like a little bit bigger, a little bit more forward, maybe a little bit less in shadow than this eye without the primer. So it's not a bad color. It's just that I don't know, I was expecting it to be clear maybe, but it is relatively bright. So I don't know if they make this in different colors. I would certainly hope so, because this is fine for me as a light-skinned person, but anybody who's darker than me would probably find it challenging to use this and look normal, even though I realize that most of the time makeup is going to cover that up. If you want a dark look, then you probably don't want a light base like this. And what we're going to do is 2 looks today, I think, because I want to demonstrate what I did to get the other look because so many people had asked. But I also really want to use the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette because it's so much fun. The look that I've been doing is pretty natural, so I think it'll be fairly easy to smoke it up with the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge afterwards. But this Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in a Palette is one of the reasons that I wanted to make this makeup bag, because she came out with a new version of these. I think it's been 4 years since she's released one of these palettes, and they were one of my favorite things ever because they're so easy to travel with. And so as soon as I saw the new ones, I was like, oh, I wanted the darker one. I was like, I need that. No, I don't need that because I have this. And so that's why I put this in my bag. This is the Beauty Glow version of the palette, and it is gorgeous. And it's so funny because every time I wear these colors on my eyes, I get compliments. Like, I don't get complimented on my makeup a whole lot, but I do when I wear this palette. So I think there's something to the colors. So the first one here that I'm going to go in with is, it's like a medium toned warm brown. It could probably lean orange on some people, but on me, although it does lean warm, it's okay. See, it leans warm, but not orange. It still looks enough like dirt for me. So I just went in with a somewhat fluffy brush. This is the Refer #1, and it is somewhat powdery. It doesn't have a whole lot of kickback in the pan, but it does have a little bit. And I just like to tap it off because a lot of it does tend to come off. And I try to relax my eyes as much as I can. I have a habit of always raising my eyebrows, but when I do my eye makeup, I try not to because I want to see where these hoods fall. And instead of like following the curve down, I try to counteract it by going up a little bit because I feel like that just makes my eyes look a little bit more open, not quite as hooded. So I'm not in the crease, I'm definitely above the crease because my crease is in here. You cannot see my crease when my eyes are open. And then I just kind of took what was left on the brush and I went underneath my eyes. Then I used this kind of darker shiny shade on the outer half of my lid. And this is kind of like a golden color. And then I used the lighter shiny shade. They're both satiny shades, I would say. And then I just took this on the inner corner towards the middle, and then I blended the two together. My eyes are naturally a mix of gray, green, and blue, and depending on what I wear, it brings out different colors. And I feel like there's something that brings out almost like a little bit of faint teal to my eyes when I wear this shade, and I think it's this warm brown shade that's doing it, that's kind of contrasting with the blue-green in my eyes, and I think that that's what people were seeing and complimenting. But it's a super simple look, and these colors are everywhere. That is the eyeshadow palette right there, and I have a feeling most neutral eyeshadow palettes on earth, all of the dirt-colored dirt palettes, have these three colors in them. So if you are trying to recreate this at home, you just need a warm mid-tone brown, a very golden, kind of darker, dimmer champagne satin, and then a champagne satin, and then you have this look. But of course, it needs some liner, it needs some brows, and it needs some lashes, so let's do that too. The Anastasia Brow Wiz in Taupe has been working out really well for me, except for the fact that the spoolie fell off. That's actually annoyed me more than I thought it would, because I do like a good spoolie. So I haven't been able to use that. Luckily, I do have just a normal spoolie brush, so I can just use that to kind of go through my brows, but it is annoying to have to reach for a completely separate tool when normally it's just an all-in-one sort of thing. I have been happy with the color and the formula though. Strangely enough, I've been weirdly attracted to brow products lately, and I don't know why. Like, I've never had an obsession with brow pencils before, but it's specifically brow pencils for me that I'm intrigued by. And so I'm thinking about treating myself to a new one over Christmas. I don't know if I will, because the more I think about it, the more pointless it seems. But I don't know, part of me just really wants to splurge on a nice brow pencil and try something new. So maybe I will. I'm going for a softer eye look today, so I'm going to use my Kiko Milano eyeliner in shade number 4. This is one of my favorite brown shades, so I always enjoy a good excuse to use this. And I'll be using a brown mascara. This is the Clinique High Impact Mascara in the shade Black Honey. And this is kind of a purpley brown, which I really like. I also feel like it brings out some nice colors in my eyes. But I like it because it's subtle. It's not like a super colorful mascara. And I like how fluffy it makes my lashes. I like a good fluffy moment. My blush is also going to come from this Beauty Glow palette. And what I really like doing was taking the darker blush here and putting it kind of towards the outside and a little bit lower. So I had it up here and then I took it down. Like I tend to usually focus my blush up here, but I took it just a little bit lower to almost use it like a little bit of a contour. And then I added the brighter, lighter blush where I typically put my blush, which is pretty high on my cheek. And I just feel like it adds a little bit more dimension. And then I want to use a little bit of this bronzer. I have been so obsessed with my Gucci bronzer that I don't put it down, but it's kind of a shame because this is also a really nice bronzer. So I want to use some of that today too. Although I have to admit, I was reaching in my bag for my Gucci bronzer a whole lot. And sometimes I do bronzer before blush and sometimes I do it after. I don't know why, but I feel like both work. It depends on what kind of look you're going for, I guess. But I like it both ways. And I have to say, the Charlotte Tilbury powder highlight in this palette, I think is the same formula as her like classic contour and highlight palette that's in powder form. And if it is, wow, this formula is really nice. It's weird though, because I don't typically like blinding highlighters. And I wouldn't say this is blinding, but it is much shinier than I'm used to nowadays. And yet there's something soft about it, so I can still wear it. I just really like it. For the lips, I used one of my favorite lip combos. It's Charlotte Tilbury and the Lip Cheat in the shade Iconic Nude. And I've been pairing that with, I think, my favorite beige lipstick that I've ever tried. That's the Charlotte Tilbury JK Magic. So this is the look that I was asked to recreate, and it's a look that's something I wear almost every day, this kind of thing. It's all shades of dirt, which is of course my favorite, but we're gonna do some extra and we're gonna use the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette to grunge it up, especially because Halloween's almost here. We have to do something at least a little spooky, even if I'm not the spookiest person ever. We're going to use the smoky palette. I can never resist a good gunmetal, so I'm gonna start off with the shade Avant Garde. And I'm just gonna take it on this silicone doohickey. That is the official name, a doohickey. I'm just gonna add this to the outer corner. And then I'm gonna blend out the edge of that a little bit with this brush here. And that alone is nice, but I think I want to add some silver, and I think we're gonna go in with Rebel. I'm just gonna use my finger for this one. I think I like this because it still looks very neutral, but when I close my eyes, there's a little bit more impact there. Or should we go in and smoke it up a little bit? We should probably smoke it up at least a little bit, right? Okay. I guess we'll do that then. An excuse to put on more makeup. Why would I say no to that? I think, do I want to go in with Hope or Renegade? I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful today than like a Renegade, so I think we'll go with Hope. And we'll just add a little bit of smokiness. I also think Hope is going to blend a little bit better with the shade that I already have down on my eye from the Charlotte Tilbury palette. And I have to admit, as much as I really like this palette, especially I like the Grunge shade, that's kind of the black gloss shade in here. I really like that. I used that several times this month and enjoyed it every time. I really like the colors in the palette and I really like the sparkly shades, but I have to say the mattes have been kind of letting me down. I feel like they're a little bit hard to blend. They get stuck in certain places and I don't know what changed because I don't remember it being like this. And it's only, I think it's only a year old. So I'm a little bit concerned as to why the mattes aren't performing so well. And part of me is just wondering if it's in my head because like I feel like they're blending okay right now, but no, I see some patchiness in there. I feel like the mattes in this palette aren't the best. The sparklies are great and I can make the mattes work, but I'm wondering, was I blind to this in the beginning or is this something that has developed over time? If you have this palette and you've had it since it came out, can you let me know? Have the mattes changed for you too, or is this all just in my head? All in all, I have to say I'm still pretty tickled by the idea of having a monthly makeup capsule. It makes my life easier on busy days, so that's one great reason. Another reason is that it gives me a super excuse to shop my stash. And for example, that Charlotte Tilbury Beauty Glow palette that I put in here, it was inspired by a new release that I didn't have to get because I could use something I already had to scratch that itch, and then I got to use it. That's a palette that I often kind of save for travel just because it's so convenient, but there's no reason that I have to save it for anything. I can use it every day because it's an absolutely gorgeous palette. And so I'm glad that I gave myself an excuse to use it by putting it in this bag. And also several of the items in here, including the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette, were really smart choices because they all were an equivalent of something new on the market. For example, I chose the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette because the Dolce & Gabbana palettes came out with a smoky version, and several people had asked me to review that, and I was thinking about doing it, but then I just thought, am I gonna get use out of that if I already have my Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge? And so I was kind of weighing it, and when I had the Huda Beauty palette in this capsule, I kind of lost interest in the new version of a smoky palette. And so it was a smart idea, I think, especially because I haven't been feeling well. My shoulder is just, it's like keeping me up at night. And you know when you can't sleep, you're just like miserable all the time. Like that's how I feel right now. And I used to shop to make myself feel better. I've been gradually learning to do that less and to try to do something positive to actually solve my problems instead of using retail therapy as a band-aid that doesn't actually fix anything. And so this exercise helped me to do that. And I'm really happy about it because I think in general, I'm happier. Like, even though I'm not feeling all that great, I'm able to avoid the temptation of shopping to try to make myself feel better because I'm shopping my stash. And essentially I'm doing the same thing, just without wasting money or time on something new that I don't need because I already have a version of it here. If you enjoy beauty content that likes to balance the excitement of the new with the joy of what we already have, then please like, comment, subscribe, and maybe check out this video here. Thanks for hanging out, and to all of my patrons and channel members, including my Adagio angels, for making content like this possible. I hope we can all remember that even stumbling can be a form of moving forward. So let's stumble in style.